Kicked my friend out after she kicked my dog and refused to clean up. Now she lost her job for assaulting her boss and got arrested for destroying our other friend's property. As the title says, last week I kicked what I thought was a good friend out of my house because I can no longer handle her antics. Just want to write it here just to de-stress and deal with the grief of losing a friend. This is probably gonna be really long, so sorry in advance. Kendall and I met in university back in 2016. We studied different majors but were from the same department, so we shared many classes together and bonded over our passion for gaming and memes. We hit it off right away and became pretty close throughout our college years. We'd hang out between classes, pull all-nighters for assignments, and even did some group projects together when we could. She was cool to be around and we had a lot of fun. Upon graduation, Kendall moved back to her hometown due to COVID and found a job there. We kept in touch online through Instagram. We'd comment on each other's posts and occasionally have video calls to catch up. She seemed to be doing okay, though she'd sometimes complain about living with her parents again after having the freedom of college life. About 3 years later, Kendall messaged me out of the blue saying she found a better paying job in the city I live in, so she was planning to move out from her parents' place. When I asked her about her plans for accommodations, she replied with, "That's the thing. I was going to ask if you have an extra bedroom that I could move into. For context, I inherited an apartment from my late grandfather, which is a nice 3-bedroom 2-bath near the city center a while back, and I currently live alone there since it is closer to my workplace and it has all the convenience of public transport. It's a really nice place and I feel lucky to have it, especially in this economy." After some thinking, I figured there was no harm in living with Kendall since I considered us as close friends. We discussed the terms and the rent, which I set pretty low compared to market rate since she was my friend. The agreement was that she'd pay her share of utilities and groceries, clean up after herself, and find her own parking since my apartment only came with one spot. A week later, Kendall moved into my apartment. It was great at first. My home felt more lively than usual, and the thought of going home to a close friend warmed my heart and gave me a sense of security. We'd watch movies together, order takeout, and talk about our day. It reminded me of our college days and I was happy to have that friendship back in my life. Things were okay for a while and then shit went downhill super quick. Kendall started complaining about many things at home, about her work, her savings, and how she feels homesick. At first I was very accommodating, thinking maybe she just needs time to get used to the city life. I offered as much help as I can, even to the point of telling her if she's low on money I wouldn't mind voiding a month's rent if it meant I could help her to achieve financial stability. There was this one time she came home almost in tears because her boss had criticized her work. I spent the whole evening consoling her and even ordered her favorite food to cheer her up. Another time she mentioned she was short on rent and I told her she could pay me later when she was more stable. I was really trying to be a good friend. I taught her how I save money, how I live off with my then low salary with several commitments like my car, my dog, and a student loan. I grew up where my parents expect me to be independent, so I told her things I'd do when I'm low on cash, how to get freelance jobs, etc., but she always seemed to have excuses for every suggestion I have. Finding a freelance job is too hard, or how she couldn't let go of her premium junk food, that she isn't willing to cook or meal prep, and I eventually decided to leave it as it is. Then after 2 months of living together, I realized Kendall started treating me as some kind of competition. She would constantly ask me things like how much money I make a month, how many job hoppings did that take. Anything that she thinks she's better than me at, she'll definitely pop that question. She boasts about how she is loyal to her paying company and how I would never be able to move up the corporate ladder, as she called me an industry frog. This one time we were talking about our jobs and I mentioned I was thinking about applying somewhere else for better opportunities. She laughed and said, "You'll never stick around long enough to get promoted. Companies hate job hoppers like you." I tried to explain that job hopping is actually common these days to increase your salary, but she just kept going on about loyalty being more important. She once snooped my savings balance and asked how TF did I have so much saved up with commitments, etc. Mind you, she didn't have a lot of commitments since her parents paid off her student loans and fully paid off a brand new car for her, and maybe I should stop collecting rent from her. I got mad, and told her if she isn't happy living with me maybe she should move out. Cue crocodile tears as she said it was a joke, I didn't have to take her seriously. She begged for forgiveness and promised to never snoop my personal items and details again. I let it go once, but she kept bringing things up like, "Well, you have the cash and a credit card," every time I told her I'd rather stay home because I no longer have the budget to go out and have fun. Comments like these became more frequent when I got a new job a while back. She'd make these little digs constantly, like if I ordered delivery she'd say must be nice to have all that disposable income, or if I bought myself something nice she'd make comments about how I was showing off. Then there was this awkward phase where she started acting strange around my boyfriend. Whenever he'd come over, she'd suddenly dress differently and act all flirty with him. She'd laugh super loud at all his jokes and find excuses to touch his arm or sit closer to him than necessary. Once when I went to the kitchen to get drinks, I came back to find her basically leaning against him on the couch. My boyfriend later told me he felt really uncomfortable but didn't want to make a scene. On top of that, she doesn't clean up after herself. I'd come home to dirty dishes piled in the sink, her clothes thrown around the living room, and food wrappers left on the coffee table. When I'd ask her to clean up, she'd say she was too tired or she'd do it later, but later never came. I started cleaning up after her just to keep the peace, which I realize now was a mistake. She also started parking in my parking space without asking. Our initial agreement was that she had to find her own parking space if she's moving in with her own car because my apartment only has one parking lot per unit. But multiple times I'd come home and find her car in my spot, forcing me to park blocks away and walk home. When I confronted her, she'd say things like I was only going to be a minute or I didn't think you'd be home so early. The straw that broke the camel's back was when I caught her kicking my dog in his abdomen when I got home from work. I had come home early that day and walked in to see her literally kicking my poor dog who wasn't doing anything but lying in his bed. I yelled at her and rushed to check my dog. Luckily he was fine, but I still rushed him to the vet for safety measures. I got home and she sneered that it was just a dog and as a friend I shouldn't treat her like that. I asked why she'd kicked my dog and she didn't answer me. She shrugged and tried to escape into her room. At this point it was already about a year since Kendall moved in with me. I lost my cool and told her off, bringing up all her problems and how I try to be nice and accommodating. Then I told her I'm giving her a week to move out and that from then on I rather we keep our relationship casual or we don't ever talk at all. Kendall cried and begged me to not kick her out, but soon it turned into her screaming back at me, calling me a bad friend because apparently in her words, I didn't tell her off on how badly she was behaving, like WTF? There was a lot of back and forth which I don't remember what I said, but I remember eventually calling her an entitled brat. She cried again saying it was uncalled for and stormed off to her room. The next day I was bombarded with texts from other uni friends, some calling me selfish and others sympathize with me. Apparently, Kendall posted our argument on Facebook and Instagram, painting me to be the bad guy. She wrote this long post about how I suddenly turned on her and threw her out on the street for no reason. She conveniently left out all the crap she'd pulled and made it sound like I was just being cruel. I was upset at first, but I decided that after Kendall moved out we would no longer be friends, as well as those who took her side of the story and condemned me without hearing my side. I didn't bother posting my own version online because honestly I was just too exhausted by the whole thing. Last week, Kendall finally left, and I have changed the locks on my apartment. I am definitely still grieving about this loss of a friend as I've had many good times with Kendall. For now I want to focus on myself and hopefully I eventually get over this. My dog seems happier too, which is a good sign I guess. Ida for kicking her out? Maybe I should have been more patient or set better boundaries earlier on? I don't know. Sometimes I wonder if I overreacted. Edit. The whole teasing that I have more money than Kendall gotten worse when I told her I was given an offer by an MNC as a senior designer, and I disclosed her the offered salary, as we always did, like I know how much she earns too, which was about 50% more than hers. That was dumb on my part. I now understand why my parents told me to never disclose/discuss salaries the moment I started working. After I told her about the new job, she stopped talking to me for like 3 days, then suddenly started making these passive-aggressive comments about how some people get lucky while others have to actually work hard. I tried to ignore it, but it just got worse over time. Update 1. Wow, I didn't expect this to blow up like it did. Thanks for all the comments and support, it really means a lot. Some of you were asking about my dog. He's fine. The vet said there was no injury, thank goodness. Hello everyone, I'm here with some updates about me and my doggo as well as my now ex-friend, Kendall. Let's start off with the update about myself. I've been doing well and surprisingly, as some of you mentioned previously, I had gotten over the loss of this friendship rather quickly. My boyfriend planned a trip to a pet-friendly beachfront hotel and I spent a few days with just my boyfriend and doggo. We played in the sea water and I watched my dog play in the sand. Overall had a great time and we even had grilled fish together while watching the sunset. Doggo had a deboned fish fillet. It was nice to get away for a bit and clear my head. Being at home was starting to feel weird after everything that happened, and the change of scenery helped a lot. My boyfriend has been really supportive through all this, which I'm grateful for. I am also grateful for my friends who stood by my side regarding this issue. They check in on me from time to time and sent me funny content to watch during my free time. Some of them even told me their stories about Kendall and their discontentment with her behavior, which I will list some below. Friend A. Kendall ridiculed Friend A several times because Friend A earned less than Kendall despite he has worked a year longer than Kendall. Friend B. Kendall trash-talked friend B's company via Instagram just because Kendall flunked her interview with said company with flying colors. Friend C, Kendall always demands friend C to be her personal driver during our college days. If friend C refuses, Kendall will guilt trip her. Friend D ruined friend D's assignment by pranking him. She actually formatted his laptop when the project was due in 2 weeks. When confronted, all Kendall said was oopsies. There are many more, but these are the more icky ones I've heard from my friends. Honestly, hearing all these stories made me realize that Kendall has always been problematic. I just never noticed it because she hadn't directed her behavior toward me until we lived together. It's like they say, you never really know someone until you live with them. And now with that out of the way, here is today's main course. After I kicked Kendall out of my house, one of my uni friends, let's call her Anne, stood by Kendall's version of events and has allowed Kendall to move in with her instead. Anne was one of the people who texted me saying I was being cruel and that friends should support each other no matter what. She basically lectured me about how I should have been more understanding of Kendall's situation. Well, guess what happened? Anne called me out of the blue this afternoon and her first question to me was, how on earth did you manage to put up with Kendall for a year? She's driving me crazy. Long story short, whatever Kendall did when she's living with me, she now does it to Anne. Snooping Anne's personal items, leaving dirty laundry around, generally being a prick in the butt. And told me she's planning to force Kendall out of her house too. I didn't comment much since Anne were among those who called me a cruel person, but now it has came back to bite her. I just listened and tried not to say I told you so too many times. But wait, that's not all. According to Anne, Kendall lost her job because she tried to ask for a 100% increment and assaulted her supervisor when the increment request was turned down 2 weeks ago. She was immediately escorted out of the office building by security. And she just texted me 20 minutes ago saying she needed a favor from me, that she wants a job at my workplace. I replied stating there isn't any vacancy. TBH, even if there is, I wouldn't hire her. Lmao. Like, can you imagine having to work with someone who kicked your dog? No, thanks. So yay, I hope this is the last time I will hear from Kendall, and I'll only update if somehow something interesting happened that involves Kendall. Thanks again for all the support, it really helped me get through this mess. Update 2, I can't believe I'm back with another update, but a lot has happened since my last post. Some of you asked for more details about what's been going on with Kendall, so here goes. Hello everyone, it's been about 2 months since I kicked my now ex-friend, Kendall, out of my home. For those who has read my story before, just want to let you guys know Doggo and I are well fed and happy. He's been extra cuddly lately, almost like he knows I've been going through some stuff. Got him a new toy the other day and he's been carrying it everywhere. If you guys remember last time, Anne, one of my friends who sided with Kendall, told me about all the horrible things that has happened while having Kendall as a roommate. Oh boy, and had to call the cops to evict Kendall. I didn't think things would escalate that far, but apparently they did. I happened to meet Anne at a pet-friendly cafe to enjoy a good book yesterday while my doggo gets to enjoy playing at the doggy daycare-ish kinda area. I did wonder if it was intentional on her side, since all my friends know I love this cafe in particular. Anne greeted me and asked if she could sit and have a chat with me. We started out with some small talk, but the moment she brought up about her evicting Kendall, I just sat there and listened. I gave in a smile and prodded her lightly with a comment I borrowed from the previous comment on Reddit. Oh, so you're gonna really kick her out then? I remember someone last told me it was cruel to kick a friend out of their homes, and stuttered for a while before saying how I should have made a post to counter/clarify Kendall's social media claims about me. I simply told her neither have I the energy to do so nor I have the need to. Which in turn, landed us in some brief awkward silence before I asked what she needed from me. And told me she wanted someone to vent to about Kendall and didn't know who to turn to. And told me she filed a police report against Kendall for theft and destruction of property, and ultimately and needed the assistance of police officers to evict Kendall from her home. She is also in the midst of filing a restraining order, as she mentioned Kendall looked completely psycho at that moment. Unlike me, and lives in landed property, so I guess she'd be a lot more worried about Kendall coming back to find her. Kendall apparently stole Anne's debit card and spent a whopping $2,000 in total. And only found out about the missing money when she found her debit card missing from her wallet. She checked the bank statements only to find that $2,000 went to clothes, expensive meals and clubbing activities. At this point, one might ask, how did Anne know it was Kendall that spent that money? Well, the answer presented itself when Kendall came home screaming at Anne for terminating her debit card. According to Anne, Kendall was shouting every insult in the book while flailing her arms around with Anne's debit card in hand, which Kendall proceeded with slamming the card on the table before storming off into her room. That was the first time Anne felt afraid of another person, much less a friend. Since then, Kendall made Anne's life hell on earth. Kendall would leech off Anne's groceries, judges her choice of snacks, body shames and etc. Kendall also attempted to seduce Anne's boyfriend. She once kissed Anne's boyfriend, let's call him Jason, on the cheek and giggled before running straight for her room during movie night. In another instance she groped Jason's manhood right in front of Anne but later claimed that she was drunk and thought what she touched was a couch pillow. The worst thing that Kendall did was throwing herself onto Jason and saying she has a fever and later guided Jason's hand to feel her breast in which and walked in at the same time Jason's hand was under Kendall's shirt. These incidents has since caused a strain between the three and Jason felt awkward to the point where he told Anne he would stop visiting her house unless Kendall moves out. Anne cried for a bit when she reached this part. And then told Kendall to move out, and gave her a week to do so. Kendall then cried and ran out of the house only to come back later in the evening to lock herself in her room. Anne presumed that Kendall is packing her stuff and she decided to ignore Kendall for the time being. The next morning Anne woke up to the sound of some grunts and broken ceramics. She rushed out to her yard to see an unhinged Kendall swinging a rod against everything she could hit, a tree, flower pots, even the grass on the ground. This led Anne to immediately lock her doors and call the police fearing for her own safety. The police arrived and handled the situation swiftly and they took Kendall away. There was still a lot of screaming and shouting. Anne said she's not sure if Kendall is being locked up or has anyone who would have posted bail for her. While I guess it was kinda nice sipping tea about Kendall but at how Anne described Kendall as behaving, I wonder if she'd actually needed professional help. I can't help but feel sad for her condition despite we have gone no contact for 2 months. Part of me feels guilty, like maybe I should have tried to get her help instead of just kicking her out. But then I remember how she treated my dog and I realized there was nothing else I could have done. I don't know if there will be another update after this.